Our next guest doesn't actually need an introduction, but I'm going to do it anyway. Jeffrey Gurian. Hi,
Hi, Donna. How are you?
fabulous. We met recently. We kind of jived on the fact that my show used to be called Live It Up, and I love making people happy. You are cut from the same cloth.
It's what I do. Yeah.
Wow. So, Jeffrey, where did your journey start? Because you've had a lot of different careers, but somehow you've seamlessly blended them together into your own persona.
It's a weird story, even for me, Donna. When I was 12 years old, I must have been a really weird kid because I knew I wanted to be a doctor already. At 12, I decided what I wanted to be. And I knew I was too sensitive to handle life and death situations. And I was wearing braces at the time. So I said, you know what? I'll be a dentist because you don't have to worry about anybody dying in your office. The only thing that could die is the person's nerve in their tooth. And I could handle that. And I was already writing comedy. So my whole life was that split. And I never changed. Most 12-year-old kids have no idea what they want to do.
But you did.
But I did. It was like, it's been my path for my whole life.
Now, when you said you were already writing comedy, you were writing jokes for yourself and then like doing them at camp or something?
I was writing funny things that I thought were funny and reading them to my friends.
Okay.
I was already struck by comedy. My grandfather owned a nightclub, so I grew up around show business. And both my parents had a wonderful sense of humor. And my dad used to take me to comedy films when I was growing up. And I think that instilled a love for comedy for me. And so it was amazing to me that I got to work with idols that I watched on TV. You know, I got to write for Rodney Dangerfield and Joan Rivers and Gilbert Gottfried and Richard Belzer and Andrew Dice Clay. I was the main writer for the Friars Club for 12 years. And I got to work with legends from the golden age like Jerry Lewis. And if you remember Milton Berle was actually my sponsor in the Friars Club.
Really?
Which was a great honor to me.
Speaking of Milton, I don't know if you noticed his portrait in our hallway.
I didn't happen. There were so many that I didn't happen to see it.
That's so lovely. So there is when he was honored, there is a picture of that, him being honored in the Friars Club. You could probably find yourself, Jeffrey, in the
Probably
picture.
because I was his guest at the testimonial in his honor.
Wonderful.
And it was such a great thrill for me when I'd be on the phone with Milton Berle and I'd be pinching myself like, I'm talking to Milton Berle, and he's a friend of mine, you know? So
Speaking
my
of
life
friends,
has been very unusual.
Also Bob Saget. I noticed that, dear friend, Bob Saget. You know, I think what's wonderful about you, Jeffrey, is that you just have this embracing quality, this charisma, where people just want to come up and like hug you, and everybody's always so happy to see you. At least in the comedy circuit, when I watch things or what people say about you, everybody's like, a lot of times they'll even say that they owe their career to you. What is that about you that's helping support comics?
You know, it is. My goal has always been to put out positive energy to the universe, and I love to support people. I never write anything negative. I'm also a comedy journalist, amongst the other things that I do in the comedy world. I've been covering the comedy scene for more than 20 years with my well, it's a vlog now, Comedy Matters TV. So I'm always on the red carpet interviewing people. And I never write anything bad about people because I respect everybody that performs. It's such a hard thing to go up on stage and try to convince strangers that what you think is funny is actually funny. You know, so if someone has a bad show, that could happen to anybody. I don't write about that. I'm not looking to do those things. Jerry Seinfeld once asked me to keep a secret. He was doing his Netflix special at the comic strip. And that was my home club for a long time. I wrote the book on the comic strip with Chris Rock. And Jerry didn't want people to know that he was going to do his Netflix special there because he was doing his earliest material. He spent the first 4 years of his career at the comic strip. And I kept it a secret. It would have been a great scoop for me to do it, but I don't do things like that. It was worth it to me. It was more important to maintain his friendship than for me to get a scoop. So I only write positive things, and people say that's probably why everyone stops off to talk to me on the red carpet. Kevin Hart, they were dragging him off the carpet, but I produced him in 2010. I did a benefit for Haiti, and Kevin was the star. And 3,000 people came out to Westbury to see the show, and they were dragging him off the carpet. He goes, no, I have to talk to Jeffrey, and gave me a big hug, and you know, that's how I roll, basically.
Indeed,
positive energy.
And a lot of people are realizing that too, because look at you, cover boy.
I'm a cover girl.
Yes, you are. Look at
I'm
that.
officially a cover girl. Thanks
So
to
cute.
Sutton Place magazine.
Yes.
And they put a picture in there in this layout of me holding a balloon because in the articles that they write about me, I always talk about my inner child is my best friend.
And you brought a couple of fun things here today, too, because I asked you, I said, Jeffrey, tell me about this fun. So here you are with the balloon, right? And then we're going to show a close-up of this, too, because we have other pictures that we're going to play in place. But what's also fascinating is you're just a who's who. Jeffrey, everybody who's anybody. Plus, you're also like a dentist. I'm like, how? I'm like,
it's a crazy story.
I love the fact that you're helping people smile in multiple ways.
Well, I was a cosmetic specialist, and then I spent 12 years at NYU as a clinical professor in oral medicine and orofacial pain. And my specialty was taking away headaches, TMJ.
Yes.
Because of stress, people clench and grind their teeth. And I'm always glad to be able to mention that, because in this country alone, there's more than 150 million people who suffer with what they think are migraine headaches that are really coming from their jaw, from clenching and grinding their teeth.
Interesting.
And I lectured on that at NYU, at Temple University, where I was a graduate. Recently, the dean asked me to, see, I no longer practice. I'm a former cosmetic dentist, but I'm still active in the field. I just got asked to be the keynote speaker in Minneapolis this coming July for the Academy of General Dentistry. Thousands of people are coming, and I'm going to be the keynote speaker, which is a great honor to me, talking about not only dentistry, but happiness, mindset, and changing negative thinking to positive thinking. And that's why I write my books.
I know, let's bring those on. And by the way, I'm just looking at this, and yes, Jerry Seinfeld, Amy Schumer, Amy Poehler, John Mulaney.
Even women not named Amy, right?
I was going to say, yes. And speaking of John Mulaney, tell us about tuna real quick, and then we'll talk about your books.
Too much tuna.
Too much tuna. Too much tuna.
I was at a party some time ago, and all I remember is Chevy Chase was there. It was a big comedy event, and two young guys came over to me, Nick Kroll and John Mulaney, and they said, "Would you mind if we took a picture with you?" And I said, "Of course not," you know. And it wound up being their Facebook picture. And Nick said to me, "If I ever get a TV show, would you be a guest on it?" I said, "Sure, of course." I didn't know, you know, people say nice things all the time. A few years later, I'm sitting at my desk, the phone rings. It's a production company from LA. Nick Kroll wants to know if you'd come out and be on Kroll Show. So I said, of course. So I fly out to LA. They don't tell me what we're going to do. And it turns out on the set, we're doing Too Much Tuna, which is a very silly thing where they prank people. They dress up as these two old men, the Oh Hello Boys, and they prank people with a tuna sandwich that's about that high, right? And it turns out I'm the very first person to be pranked. And they have me on, you know, they say, "We're pranking our dear, dear friend, Dr. Jeffrey Gurian, DDS." And I said, "Could you please leave that out? Because I try not to mix the two, like comedy and being a doctor." And they said, "No, we love that. We love that." Anyway, it went viral. So that's on my resume. The first person to be pranked with Too Much Tuna. And they made me this amazing jacket, an exact replica of Curtis Sliwa's Guardian Angels jacket.
Yes.
But mine says Gurian Angels.
There you go.
And they had me wear it to the Broadway show. And then we did the show in Montreal at the Just for Laughs Festival, which is the biggest comedy festival in the world. And they had me give the tuna sandwich to Judd Apatow, the king of Hollywood. So now everybody knows about Too Much Tuna.
Too much tuna.
And it's so silly, but people seem to love it.
Well, what about
It's on
tuna?
my
Well, what
website.
about egg salad? Talk about your little egg
so
here. This is so cute.
These are some of my toys.
Okay.
See, if you came into my home, you'd think little children live there. My kids are grown up, but I surround myself with toys because I say it's important to stay connected to your inner child. When I lecture, I teach people to create what I call their own happiness center. Once you leave the house, you're at the control of the universe. You have no control over what crosses your path. The only place you can control your environment is where you live. So I surround myself with things that make me happy. White, bright colors make me happy. My carpeting is white, my piano is white, my car is white. Everything is bright and colorful. Balloons everywhere, crayons. I have things like a big pen, you know, and I carry that pen in case this pen doesn't work. I always have
a spare pen. A spare pen.
Actually, they made me take this off an airplane. I bought this pen in Las Vegas, and I don't know what they thought it was, but they said, "You can't bring that on the plane." I had to put it in my luggage and pack it away.
Oh my goodness, really?
And, yeah,
like the attack of the killer pen?
Isn't that amazing?
Really?
So I found eggs with legs.
So sweet.
So in my house.
Thank you for sharing your toy with me. That's so cute, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
You're
in my
welcome.
house, everything that I see, pictures of people I love, my children, their children. I surround myself, I walk the walk. It's one thing, a lot of people just talk the talk, but I try to live what I talk about. And so I started writing books on happiness. I wound up with 8 books.
Okay.
5 of them are on comedy,
I see
3
some
on
of them.
happiness.
Yeah, let me see what you got.
Okay, this one is Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind.
Cute.
A spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get a dog to sit in lotus position?
You did pretty well with this, Jeffrey.
So it's got over 350 mostly 5-star reviews on Amazon. It was a bestseller on Amazon. And then I wrote the book, Fight the Fear, the second in my happiness series, which you can look at.
Lovely.
It's all about conquering fear, because people
need
are facing fear every day. And fear is a bully that tells you that you can't accomplish your goals. I've been battling fear all my life, and I never let it stand in my way, which is why I'm able to do the things that I do. One of the things I didn't mention, I stuttered very badly from the time I was 6 or 7 through my 20s and beyond. And as you can see, I no longer stutter. As a matter of fact, you can't even shut me up. I speak a lot, but
I love that. As a talk show host, I love this, Jeffrey, because it needs to be. Have you ever?
I hate dead air. When you do interviews, I'm an interviewer. I know what that's like, to have somebody on and you have to drag,
like,
you have to drag it out of them. It's horrible, right? But I cured myself of stuttering. It took me many years. And now as an avocation, I work with stutterers all over the world. And I teach them how not to stutter. And if you don't mind, I just want to say that website.
Yes.
It's called StopStutteringNowGurian.com.
Okay.
And there's a lot of information. If anybody out there knows people who stutter, because there are millions of people who stutter, and their families are affected by it, just let them look at the website and see if it makes sense to them. Because nobody's telling people that they can get better. And as you can see, it took me years because I had no one to help me. But I learned how to change my mind, literally controlling my mind so that I no longer have the need to stutter. And that's something, I'm very grateful that you let me mention that, because it's an important message to bring out. And my last book in the happiness series is called Facing Adversity, Stories of Courage and Inspiration. And it's true stories that I've been collecting for more than 20 years, true stories of people that overcame tremendous difficulties in their life to lead happy and meaningful lives. It's meant to give people inspiration, because we're all faced with obstacles. Every single one of us has obstacles, and some people are crushed by them, and some people find the inner courage to rise above them. And I'm always impressed with that. So these are my happiness books.
And I was excited when we started talking about that too, because as I shared with you, my television show was gifted to me in a dream in 2008 when the economy was terrible and people were giving up hope. And I thought, okay, I'm going to just have a TV show with all good news. Fast forward, now people thank the type of people you and I are, because we're kind of leaders in that happiness space.
It's such a wonderful thing to do, Donna. That's why they call me the Doctor of Happiness. When I was on Sirius XM, they helped me create a show called The Happiness Show. And it was all comedians, famous comedians, talking about what they do in their own lives to make themselves happy. My first guests were Colin Quinn, Susie Essman from Curb Your Enthusiasm, and Lisa Lampanelli.
Lovely.
And I just got to open for Colin Quinn at the Vermont Comedy Festival. And a couple of weeks ago, I was at the Sunshine Comedy Festival performing in Tampa, Florida. And I was the official interviewer. And I did a book signing for my book with Chris Rock.
Lovely.
So I'm still very active. I have a TV pilot that's in the process of being edited right now. And tomorrow night I'll be performing at Dangerfields. So I'm doing a whole bunch of stuff.
Doing great things. I've never met Chris Rock in person. It was only in passing. You know, like when you're in Manhattan sometimes, and there's a lot of famous people that come and go. And all of a sudden I just turned my head, and to the left of me was Joe Namath.
Oh, yeah.
And Joe's like, hey. I was like, hey. And I had met Joe before at a golf outing. But then the second I turned my head, and there was Chris Rock. And I was like, it was like almost like, you know, the Wild Coyote when you, like my head like,
yes,
and I was like, and I said, oh, hey, as if I knew him, because he seemed so familiar, right?
Sure.
And he was so gracious and kind. He goes, well, hi, how are you? Good to see you. And I was like, wow, what a classy guy that was, because I'm almost positive I would have remembered if I met him in person.
He's one of the nicest guys in the business.
Nice.
And his brothers, he's got 7 brothers, and 2 of them are in comedy. Jordan Rock, I just performed with him. He's a dear friend for a long time. And Tony Rock, who was my feature when I produced Kevin Hart. So it's a very talented family, but Chris is a wonderful guy.
Wonderful guy.
Great guy.
And I see something else there too.
Oh,
Tell me about this.
Well, you know, My favorite kind of comedy is absurdity. I like the kind of comedy that doesn't offend anybody. And if anybody knows the Weekly World News, it was the precursor to The Onion. I had a column called Gurian's World of the Bizarre, which led to this book, Man Robs Bank with His Chin, and other unusual stories missed by mainstream media. And it's got blurbs on the cover by Richard Lewis from Curb Your Enthusiasm, who wrote these hilarious stories, and the author's longtime reputation as a top comedian makes you wonder why he isn't selling out clubs in North Korea. Right?
Ba-dum-bum.
Yeah, and Colin Jost, the head of SNL Weekend Update, said, "Ever since I met Jeffrey Gurian, good things started happening to me. Coincidence? Yes." and Nick Kroll, the last one, he said, "Jeffrey Gurian asked me to write a blurb for his book, and this is it."
This is it. That's it.
Yeah, so it's a book of very unusual stories.
I actually went to stand-up university. I've tried stand-up.
Oh, really?
I wrote the 7 minutes. One of my favorite moments was actually meeting David Brenner in the past.
He was great. He was an old friend.
So great. And I found his name through AOL, because when we first had AOL, it was easy to find real people because they were all like using their real name.
Sure.
So I said, "Is this the David Brenner?" And he goes, "Is this the Donna Drake?" And then when we met in person, it was so endearing. But it was at his encouragement that he said, "Well, give it a try." So I did. So I have a good 7 minutes, but I'm thinking if I ever go back into the real business of comedy, I'm gonna maybe hire you to do some of my writing, because it's not just the delivery, but like you said, it's the setup punch. It's the delivery of the story.
It's a real art form.
It is an art form.
It's a tremendous art form, and I hate when people don't respect it. A lot of young comics get up and they just talk about what they did that day, and they think that's comedy. When I came up, you had to really write what they would call a hunk of material. You had to come up with a premise and then put a lot of punchlines behind it. And I always it's one of the things that I love about Jerry Seinfeld. They called him the doctor of comedy because he would doctor everybody's act. He was always, very sharp. He would come in with 5 or 6 new ideas every day. He works clean. Not that I always do, but he worked. Because in the days when those guys came up, he and Paul Reiser, George Wallace, if you wanted to do TV, you had to be clean. There was no cable TV in those days. So to this day, they still work clean. And I just admire that kind of writing. And you have the kind of energy that would translate very well on stage, because you're a fun person.
Wow.
And people pick up on that. The audience loves that,
Well, maybe you discovered me here today. That was
You
knowing
never
that
know.
comedy. That really resonated with my heart right now. Thank you so much. You're the doctor of happiness. And will you be performing? You said like all over the place, right? And are you enjoying that too?
I am, and I know that you're going to have a guest on, Laura Slutsky, and I'm
Yes.
doing her show on March 3rd at the Triad Theater, a very famous theater in Manhattan. And tomorrow night I'm going to be at Dangerfields. It's got new ownership.
Okay.
I used to write for Rodney. He was the first big star I ever wrote for. He used to do my material on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And during COVID, the club closed. How COVID affected. As a matter of fact, my positive energy, I just want to mention this, it helped me to survive a heart attack in 2015, a widowmaker heart attack.
Wow.
And I was back on stage 5 days later
Oh
at
my
New
gosh,
York Comedy
Jeffrey.
Club. And the owner of the
Jeffrey.
comedy club said to me, "What, are you crazy? You just had a heart attack." And I was like, "Yeah, but it's hard to get a spot here. I don't want to lose my spot." And it helped me to survive COVID, double pneumonia. In March of 2020, when COVID first came out, well, as you can tell, I'm a trendsetter. I went right out and got it. I didn't want to wait. I got COVID immediately, and I wound up in the hospital. I joke about it now,
Yeah,
but it was a
but it's
nightmare.
serious.
It was a real nightmare. And they used hydroxychloroquine on me before they politicized it, and I put myself on Z-Pak because I always keep antibiotics in the house, and they saved me, and it was an amazing thing. But positive energy, I had to fight to stay positive because we were surrounded by insanity. They ran out of rooms in the hospital. I was at NYU Langone, which was such a great hospital, and they nurtured me back to health. They kept my oxygen up, and after 4 days, they had an ambulance take me home, and it took me months to recover. But while I was recovering, that's when I wrote the 3rd happiness book, because it's always important to take a negative and try to turn it into a positive.
100%.
And not stay in that negative energy. Because when you're in a negative space, your immune system doesn't function as well.
You're absolutely
And when you're in a
right.
positive space, your immune system functions much better. And that's why it's so important to try to stay positive. It's not an easy thing. You can't say that anybody has that all the time. You have to fight to do it, but it's a worthwhile fight. And it's something that I do on a daily basis.
Can you,
And I'm very grateful to
Oh,
you
you're welcome.
for
I'm
doing the
grateful for
same
you
kind of
too.
thing.
I want to ask you for one favor.
Sure.
Could you grab that pencil right there, Jeffrey?
Oh, my big pencil.
Yeah. Could you?
I almost forgot to mention
And
it.
if you wouldn't mind, could you
Just sign it.
autograph it, please? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to have this signed cover by Jeffrey Gurian. We're having way too much fun here, and this egg is for you. Be well.